You're listening to Footy Talk, where we set the agenda and analyse the biggest topics of the week on this Tuesday. I'm here with Nick Riewoldt. Hello, Rui, on this Tuesday. How are you?
Good. Going well, buddy. Another big weekend. Just making waves as well. Footy Talk last week.
Weren't we? We went gangbusters. We went viral again.
We did.
First it was Rats, and when you had to go about the environment when Rats was there, and then you made it some headlines about...
I didn't. I didn't. Just to be clear. Jeez. All good fun, Joey. How
it is
good.
Good fun. Max King, you created some headlines when you just said, just worried about his forward craft and got to work. And now, geez, you really went out on a limb and you endorsed Bucks to be a coach of Tassie, and it went viral. The Collingwood boys, the Rat Pack, I thought it was a bit of fun. They got their responses, but that's all good. That's what all the podcasts are for. Unless you want to.
I think Bucks was the most flat that I was out campaigning for it. How am I going? Trying to pump him up, and put him in it.
Poor Bucks. But interestingly, and we will get to it on a minute, he did make a comment on the couch last night about that. But before we get to that, we always like to start the show with our own thought of the week from the round 12 action. Where do you want to go?
Well, not necessarily the action, but the recent news over the last 24 hours that Hugh McCluggage has re-signed with Brisbane. He's going to be staying at Brisbane Line. You'd imagine that'd be for life now. And it just got me thinking, with as hard as, well, at least it was reported, as hard as some of the clubs came after Hugh McCluggage, huge numbers they were throwing at him, yet he re-signs with Brisbane for much, much less. Great decision, I think. Understand the decision. But it left me thinking, why are we forcing clubs, particularly clubs down the bottom of the ladder, to pay as much of the cap as we are? Because I think what it does, it ends up putting them in a situation where really we already know how hard it is for some of these lower ranked clubs to attract really, really good players. But it's made even harder when you know they threw the kitchen sink at Hugh McCluggage. But imagine if you didn't have to pay the 90, the 95% of the cap, and you could actually go out and you could do that for 2, 3, 4, B+ grade players rather than, one marquee guy. I just think these days of having to pay as much of the cap as we do when you're an ordinary team and you've got ordinary players on big dough. We should remove that now. You shouldn't have to do that if you're a football club. That look at North Melbourne, who have been down the bottom for, going on a decade now, and have been forced to pay, at least 90-95% of the cap compared to the teams that have been right up the top. I think that's a lever now, the way we can do away with it. I mean, it's not It's not a socialist organisation, the AFL. So I think give the clubs another lever, take away the minimum standard of what you have to pay of the cap, and then allow those clubs to actually go out and be much more aggressive in free agency, because guess what? They're only paying 70% of it because they're no good.
Well, there has been reports that something like that is being looked at as part of this equalisation sort of model that they're discussing at the moment, whether they can reduce the minimum that these bottom clubs can spend, and then they can make that up. So what they haven't spent over a 3-year period, you can spend it 105, 110% of the cap in years to come, so you can try and attract some free agents. There's got to be a minimum standard, though, really. There's an AFL Players Association. They're going to not allow one club to pay 70% of a salary cap and another club pay 100%. There's got to be some a fair minimum spending of a salary cap. But I do like your idea, and I think there is some serious consideration to lowering it a little bit, almost banking that money, and then being able to spend it when you are becoming a contender and you can lure some top-end talent. So I think you might be onto something there, but I like it. I like it. What is your thoughts on long-term contracts while we're on this topic? Are you okay with 6-7 year deals? Because it is the norm now. It's been the norm for the last 2 or 3 years. I think there's sort of 60-odd to 70-odd players now that have got 5-year plus contracts. You okay with it?
Oh, look, I think they're risky. I think they're different in the AFL because they're fully guaranteed. So unless there's some sort of caveats in there where, maybe your 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th year, there are some sort of levers that you need to hit. So I think there's an element of risk that comes with them. But, I mean, we would expect the game to continue to keep, moving and growing, and the cap to keep getting higher and higher and higher. So I think, there's, as long as there's an element of risk on both sides, the player and the club, then yeah, I don't really see an issue with it. I mean, how many times do we hear about players renegotiating their 7-year deals in the 5th, 6th and 7th year anyway? So I'm not sure you ever really see the end of them.
Yeah, I agree, and I think there's a lot of talk, they're risky, but I haven't seen too many long-term contracts that have backfired, and everyone brings up Brodie Grundy, but guess what? If Collingwood didn't like the deal, you just trade them. Yeah, and another club takes on the deal, and that's pretty common as well anyway. So, yeah, it is the new norm, and congratulations to Hugh McCluggage and Sam Taylor as well, who signed a 7-year contract extension, which will take him through to 2032, but he's the best key defender in the game, so that is a good get. Hey, my thought of the week, a little bit different, but there was a lot of chat on the weekend about Melbourne getting beaten by Fremantle, 92 points. They got spanked. It was a horrible performance from Melbourne. They looked flat. There was half the team that looked like they weren't interested. And then the conversation led to, well, premiership teams do not get beaten by this sort of margin. If you are a premiership team, you do not lose games like this, which was almost effectively people ruling them out of being able to contend this year. Now, whether they will or not, I still don't know. But it just got me thinking, Roo, back to 2017. If you remember a game, we were an average St Kilda who had a couple of veterans in their side and some not bad young talent, but not elite young talent. And we took on a team called Richmond at about round 16 that year, 2017. Richmond had already lost the game. Richmond had already lost the game by 76 points earlier in the year to Adelaide. And then we played them on a Saturday night game at Marvel Stadium, and we led by 89 points at three-quarter time against Richmond. And they ended up kicking a few goals in that last quarter, but we ended up winning by 67 points. We took the foot off the gas. Well, guess what? After that, they didn't lose another game, the Tigers, and they went on to win the premiership. I'm not saying Melbourne will do that, but it can happen. And what it can do is it can sharpen you up and get you switched on. There are stories about that game, the review, and again, I don't know if it's folklore or true, but the Richmond players went into the meeting on a Monday and they thought they were going to cop it from Damien Hardwick. They'd just been pumped and they thought, oh, here we go, it's going to be brutal. And Damien Hardwick showed a clip and he played the Harlem Globetrotters music. And he said, see St Kilda, they were the Harlem Globetrotters, and Richmond, we were the Washington Generals, or whoever it is that sort of follows them around and plays against them. They all had a bit of a chuckle and they moved on from it and they went on to win. So it can happen for Melbourne. They've got some soul searching to do. They've got to find their best footy. But this is one club that I trust, Melbourne. They haven't put into a performance like this for years. I think they've only had 100 points kicked against them like 5 times in 4 years. It was rare. I trust their leaders. I trust their program. I trust the professionalism of this group that they will respond. Now, to what level that looks like will be, we'll still have to wait and see. But I'm certainly not throwing the baby out with the bathwater for Melbourne on that performance.
I remember that Richmond game well because it's the week I knew my career was over. Because the coach came to me on Thursday and said, we want you to tag Alex Rance.
That's right.
I said, wait, hold on, I'm the forward, aren't I? So that was it. That was the moment I knew my career was done.
Yeah. Well, it was probably the best move you made, tagging Alex Rance. We flogged the Tigers that week, and then the rest of history. We then won 3 of our next 10 to miss finals, and Richmond went on to win their last 10.
They won the flag.
And win the flag. Hey, let's move on because I did touch on Nathan Buckley. You were on this show and it went viral, endorsing him to be the first coach of Tassie. You thought he'd be great. Last night on the couch, he explained that he would entertain interest in the Tassie coaching job. He would be interested in hearing more about it, what it entails. He categorically said no one had approached him about it, but it is positive signs that he certainly will be someone that St Kilda, someone that Tassie will target. And as we touched on last week, you think that's a pretty good move.
Yeah, I think without backing over all the stuff I said last week, I think it would. And I mean, he's really measured and respectful, and he's spoken about the fact that Brendan Gale's still in the role as Richmond. So can he be having conversations at the moment as the Tasmanian CEO? Probably not. But look, I mean, I think whoever is pulling those strings from a Tassie perspective would be negligent in their duty if they didn't go and speak to people like Nathan Buckley, who's clearly a great candidate. So, interesting that he didn't rule it out completely, or at least entertaining it, because I think up until now, any time coaching's come up, he's been pretty emphatic. So, you're telling me there's a chance, Bucks, which is good.
Hey, let's move on. The Rising Star has come into focus this week after both Harley Reid and Sam Darcy have been suspended, which means they are ineligible. You, of course, were a winner back in 2002. I will ask you, first of all, do you think we need the fairest element for the Rising Star Award? Do you like the tradition, or is it something that we should evolve and just make it the best first or second year player and not necessarily have the fairest element to it?
Yeah, I don't think you need it. Like, particularly now where the game's changed, and you can get something wrong by a millisecond, and like the Peter Wright situation, and it can be line ball, and you get rubbed out for 4 weeks, and all of a sudden you're ineligible for award. Yeah, I don't think we need it anymore. I mean, maybe you depending on how things are graded, if it's a strike, if it's a
intentional
act. Or an intentional act, or something off field like a gambling indiscretion, or some other kind of off field suspension. I think we could maybe impose those. But if it's a football act, I think it's a bit harsh and deflating for everyone. I think how good would a count between Sam Darcy and Harley Reid be in the Rising Star? I think it's a shame.
It is a shame. To be fair, though, I was thinking about it, and there was commentary now that, I don't feel sorry for Harley Reid and all this. I was thinking, does it really matter? To me, in my view, does it really matter if Harley Reid doesn't win the Rising Star? Like, I'm being serious. When I went back and had a look at the list, I don't think anyone could name the last 5 Rising Star winners.
Well, then do away with it.
Well, no,
then get rid of the award.
It's an award that we should have, but it's not like it's this prestigious. It's not like it's the Brownlow Medal. I don't think it really matters. None of the greats have won. I mean, I looked at it. So you and Joel Selwood, and there's a few, Goods and Cousins and a handful. Yeah. But you look at some of the names on the list, and you're like, they had great careers, particularly early, some of them. But it's none of the superstars. There's no Pendlebury and Fife and Ablett and Dangerfield and Petrarca and all that. Buddy, none of those guys have won it, and they've all gone on to be superstars. It's not a. I'm
applying that lens, and it's topical because it is the Rising Star and the 2 best young prospects. But I'm applying that lens to the Brownlow Medal as well. So if you change the rules, then bring it in for all of those, because we're not talking about what we used to talk about when the rule was brought in. If your king hits someone, you can't win the Brownlow. Fair enough, but if it's a dangerous tackle, which is degrees here or there as to whether it was malicious. Like I think just you could do away with it and everyone would be happy.
Now, I'm different with the Brownlow. I think the whole prestige of the Brownlow is the tradition. Like, it's the umpires that vote. It's the best and fairest. That's what makes it what it is. It's because of the history of it, where the Rising Star, a bit more of a modern award. We probably can update that. But anyway,
so do you think, just say Peter Wright came out and polled 10 threes now to finish the season.
Yeah.
Do you think he shouldn't win it because he's not a fair player?
No, because...
Is he not a fair player?
No, it's got nothing with being a fair player. It's got to do with just the award.
It's the best and fairest.
Yeah, I mean, if you get suspended, you can't win it. Doesn't mean you're not a fair player. So, anyway, we'll agree to disagree on that one and move on. Hey, the holding the ball, did you get a view then for much of the footy on the weekend?
Not really. I mean, it was hot. So the ball winner's under more pressure, which I'm not sure is a great result. Yeah, well, you want to reward the tackler, but I think that, it was almost counterproductive to win the footy a few times on the weekend, but I think the same issue is going to exist, isn't it? It's all about how it's interpreted. So it's a different interpretation, but it's how we interpret the new interpretation.
I agree. There's still going to be free kicks that people are going to say that was too harsh and that should have been paid and that wasn't. So there's going to be it's not going to clear up anything, I don't think, with the holding the ball decision. I think there was probably some grand statements made after 7 games of footy. I think it's too early to tell. Like, some of them you're like, geez, that's hot. Some of them you go, that's a slight improvement. But I think we're still going to have the same issues with the holding the ball. I bet you by late in the year, we will still be complaining about some umpiring decisions. But we will move on. Hey, we're just going to touch on, before we get to real talk, shit talk, the Fremantle Dockers. That was a massive performance.
Now, where are we at with the Dockers? I mean, their ball movement looks to have really come on, but are we late to the party with that?
Yeah, it's a good point, Roo. I think everyone's late to the party. Their ball movement has improved for 6 weeks. So after the West Coast Eagles game, which was their most disappointing performance, their ball movement has significantly improved since then. So I think people are being a bit late to the party. I mean, they were telling people before the Collingwood game that in the 4 weeks before that, they'd had the most shots at goal in the competition and had conceded the least amount of shots in the competition. But some accuracy issues meant the scoreboard didn't look like it was great. People didn't really want to buy into it. Everyone still talks about their uncontested marks. What is interesting, their last 6 weeks, they've actually taken more uncontested marks than they did in the first 6 weeks, but their scoring has improved, and everyone thinks all of a sudden they're playing this free-flowing, carefree football, when in fact they are still marking the footy as more than ever. They have improved. They are a team, I think, that are in that mix now for who is the second, third and fourth best team in the competition. They are coming along in leaps and bounds.
Can they win it?
Well, as I always say, you've just got to get to a prelim. My view is always you've got to be in a prelim, and as we know, really, prelims, anything can happen. Depending on the night, where you're playing, injuries and a bit of luck, anything can happen. So can Freo play in a prelim? Absolutely.
Yep.
Just like there are about 9 teams right now, 9 or 10 teams that can play in a prelim final. Hey, we will take our first break. We do want to get to some real talk, shit talk, but if you are listening to us on Footy Talk and you have a question, make sure you hit us up on Instagram at footytalk_pod or on TikTok at Footy Talk Pod. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to Footy Talk. If you're listening on Spotify, please hit the bell and be notified when we drop a new episode. Here with Nick Riewoldt, playing a bit of real talk, shit talk, some of the statements that have been made the last 24, 48 hours and what our view on it is. This was from Hutchie last night on Footy Classified. I generally like Hutchie's views. He's pretty good. Hey, there should be no media personalities on the selection panel for the All-Australian Rising Star.
Oh. No, well, I would think if you're a media commentator on footy, you're probably watching more footy than the average person who's actually qualified to talk about footy. So I'm not sure I agree with that, unless the AFL go down the path of actually employing people to go and watch 9 games of football for this specific purpose. Who else is watching as much football as media personalities that actually have to comment on the game? Yeah, no, it's a good point. So I'm going to say shit talk. I'm going to say shit talk on that one. I do think, that's why you have a balance of people on, because when it comes to the voting and the discussion that occurs at the end of the year, you have a... because generally it's the interstate teams that you might not get to watch as much of if you're a Victorian-based commentator. So that's why Glenn Jakovic is on there, to represent the WA. Guys in the past, it's been Chris Johnson, Jude Bolton from Sydney. So I think there is a good breadth of representation that can go and essentially campaign for different guys, or at least make the voting panel aware of some of the guys that they might have not seen as much of. So I'm going to say shit talk for that one. Joey, one for you. So no Harley Reid this week for West Coast, we know. North Melbourne are playing the Eagles. This is their best chance for a win for the year.
I'm going to say shit talk because it's in Perth. It's at Optus Stadium. They're still pretty formidable, the West Coast Eagles at home. I think their best chance comes round 21 against Richmond. I think North will definitely win a game this year. Put that on record. They will win a game. I'm not convinced it will be this week, though, against the West Coast Eagles, even without Harley Reid. They've still got enough talent, West Coast, that they are pretty good at home. Hey, this is the final Thursday night game of footy this weekend coming up, Adelaide v Richmond. 2025, it should be a must weekly fixture. Yep.
Been strong on this in the past. I think you agree with me, Joey, that we love it. Fans love it. I'm not too sure you would get much pushback from fans, from the networks. I think really the biggest group you're going to get pushback from is the playing group. But if the league can find out a way to bring that in, it's going to result in more revenue for the game, and ultimately the players will be happy with that. So
money talks.
Yeah, few 5-day breaks, but we get paid more. Sign me up, I think would be the sentiment from the playing group. So yep, real talk for me. Last one for you, Joey. The Suns, they did it again at home, 7-0. This is the year. They just do it. They play finals for the first time in 2024.
I'm saying shit talk for now, Roo. I can't say real yet. No, not yet. Not yet. They still haven't done it consistently enough for me. They are around the mark, and they might, and certainly their time will come. In the next few years, I am on that path now. They will be scary good. But this season, I need to see it away from home. I'm not buying into it just yet. I could be wrong. I might be wrong. Hopefully I am wrong. I'd love to see them play finals, but I'm not buying into it yet. I know you've got a little connection, the Gold Coast Suns, close to your heart. And they are playing some good footy. Damien Hardwick is going to have them. They're going to be mighty tough in the years to come, but we'll just wait and see. Still plenty to play at this year. Hey, great to see you again, Rui, as always on this Tuesday. Enjoyed your company. Remember, tomorrow, Jack Heverin, Nathan Broad will have Razor Ray with them. They'll discuss umpiring and, of course, look ahead to the big freeze on Monday, the King's birthday game between Melbourne and Collingwood. Until then, enjoy your Tuesday. Thanks for watching Footy Talk with myself and Rui. New podcast episodes dropping every Tuesday, so make sure you tune in.